represent Pinellas County. Let's call this meeting to order. For those in the virtual audience, I'll introduce the other PSDA board members here this morning. We have Vice Chair Richard Bennett. He represents the beach communities. We have Josh Schulman, who represents St. Petersburg. Dan Saracki, who represents the North Pinellas cities. Jeff Gow, who represents Dunedin. Keith Sabille, who represents Pinellas Park. And we welcome everyone joining us on Zoom as well. Clarissa, can you tell us if there are any members of the public in the lobby who wish to speak?
There are no public comments.
Thank you. Let's go to the agenda. Firstly, we have the approval of the February 17th, 2021 minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move that the minutes of February 17th be approved.
Thank you, Richard.
I second.
Dan seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Well, no. Okay, next, we'll have Debbie present us or start us with the financial audit report. And this
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, you're
Thank
welcome.
you, Chair Rex.
No, go ahead.
Good morning, and today I have the pleasure of presenting the draft comprehensive annual financial report. And the first thing I want to relate to you, and also as a reminder to myself to stay on track and to be proper, is that we are no longer allowed to call it by its acronym. And the reason is it means something very, very bad in other countries. And we are just going to call it like the annual financial report or the comprehensive annual report, but we cannot refer to it by its acronym. But today's action item, which I'm very delighted to talk about, is to accept our annual financial report for fiscal 2020 and to take that recommendation to the board. We've always done very well on our audits, and this year has been no exception. Matter of fact, no is the key word today. We had no material weaknesses, no management comments, no deficiencies regarding internal controls and compliance. So I'm really proud not only of Julie Lupus, our accounting director, and our finance team, but everybody in the authority, because when it comes to internal controls, that is everyone's job. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julie, our accounting director, to introduce Cherry Beckert. And this is the first year they have been on our audit, and to say a little something about that. Julie?
Thank you, Debbie. I'd like to take this opportunity to say how really well the audit went this year. With it being a first-year audit and with a new firm and a pandemic, well, I'll be honest, and I was initially concerned. Cherry Beckert was awesome to work with. They were accommodating, on task, thorough, and available anytime they were needed. All things I expect from an auditing firm. And a shout out to our finance department who came together in a pandemic and managed to give the auditors everything they asked for. We truly do try to do it right all the time. And with that, I'd like to introduce Lauren Strope, Audit Director for Cherry Beckert, to talk about the PSTA fiscal year 20 audit.
Thank you so much, Julie, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. Today, I just kind of want to go over my required communication with those charged with governance, that being you, the Finance Committee, and really talk about the nature, the extent, and the timing of our audit procedures. So with that, if we could slip to that first slide. I'm sorry, the second, that's perfect. And Debbie kind of stole my thunder already, because this is where I go through what the findings were and what the issues were in the audit. And as she said, we really didn't have any. So to complete your audit, we actually follow 3 different types of standards. The first is just generally accepted in auditing standards, or GAS, And that requires us to check your GAAP, or generally accepted accounting principles, and ensure that your financial statements are fair and clearly presented. We're issuing an unmodified opinion this year. It used to be referred to as an unqualified opinion, and it's the highest level of assurance that we as your auditor can provide. It's a clean opinion. It's the type of opinion that you want. On the Yellow Book report, you are required to follow that because you get those federal dollars coming in. And that requires us to look at things over financial reporting, so the internal controls that you have over financial reporting. We actually don't opine on internal controls, but if we become aware of any sort of material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in your internal control structure, we are required to report those to you. So we have a no comment report this year, which again is clean, and it means that I really don't have anything else to talk about with that one. With this single audit report, we follow two sets of standards, that being the federal guidance and the state guidance to complete that audit. And that requires us to look at both compliance with each individual compliance requirement that's triggered under each grant and the internal controls over that compliance. Again, if we became aware of anything during that testing, we would have a comment or something to talk about. We have a no comment or a clean report here again. There's also a slew of other deliverables that we're required to issue when it comes to this engagement. And the first is the management letter that is required by the Auditor General of the state of Florida. This year we have a clean or no comment letter, and what that means is we really didn't have to tailor it. If we had to tailor it, it would be because there was something that the Auditor General asked us to check that really wasn't in compliance. So again, a clean letter for that one. We also issue compliance with investment policies as required by Florida state statute. Lastly, there is a data collection form that is triggered by that federal single audit, and essentially it's just an apples to apples comparison in a database of all those federal dollars that you have, and it puts you apples to apples with everybody else in the country that's receiving those federal dollars. Lastly, the National Transit Database requires us to perform some agreed upon procedures, and we're in the process of closing up that engagement now. For internal controls, again, we did not know any material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, or control deficiencies to discuss. We are required to discuss with you any sort of audit adjustments or past audit adjustments. And what that means is it's a situation where management has given us a trial balance, and we as the auditor say, hey, we really need to make this particular entry to bring things in line with GAAP to ensure that you are reporting under the generally accepted accounting principles. We did not have any of those. A past audit adjustment would mean that we brought that to management, and management, for whatever reason, said, hey, we really don't feel that it's necessary to make that entry. And then I would just be required to report it to you. And again, we did not have any of those. Over the last couple of years, you're probably used to your auditors coming up here and talking about, hey, everything's changed now because of pension, or everything's changed now because of OPEB. And the one nice thing about COVID was that GASB said, hey, let's not implement anything new this year. So nothing new was implemented this year. There was one change in your financials, which I just wanted to bring to your attention, and that's in the report itself. So you'll see it on, I believe it's page 15, but it's the first page of the report of the independent auditor. And there's simply an emphasis of matter paragraph right after the opinion. Again, this does not change the fact that you got a clean opinion. And this emphasis of matter paragraphs just points the reader to some information in note 10 regarding the uncertainty of the financial situation around COVID. I did want to mention that this is not specific to PSTA. You're going to see that this emphasis of matter paragraph in pretty much any audit opinion that's being issued this year. So I did want to point that out as a change, but there were no changes in accounting policies. If we could flip to the next slide. As far as internal controls are concerned, I did talk about how we don't opine on internal controls, but we do a lot of things with them, and we are required to review them and let you know if we find any sort of material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, which we did not. When we go to do an audit, we look at things two ways, both the line item, so the line that appears on your financial statements, that being like cash or AR, and the significant transaction cycles that get those lines onto your balance sheet and your income statement. So for the significant transaction styles, we look at things like the processing of cash receipts, the processing of cash disbursements, the managing of investments, which you have your investments included in cash and cash equivalents on your report. the processing of payroll, the acquiring and safeguarding of those capital assets, and finally, the financial reporting and close process, which is very important because that involves a lot of the year-end closing entries. We did test internal controls this year on the financial statement side, so we tested cash receipts, cash disbursements, and the processing of payroll. To perform journal entry testing, we actually use a tool called Active Data, where we get your entire GL and we dump it in, and it'll pull out any sort of what it deems to be riskier transactions, things like a debit to a revenue account or an account that's infrequently used. And it spits those out for us to test. During that testing, we found that all of the journal entries were proper and were properly approved in accordance with your policy. We do look at IT controls just as it relates to financial reporting. You can see the listing of all the things that we kind of do there, and we did not become aware of anything that we needed to communicate to you during the course of that testing. If we could switch to the next slide. These are our significant audit areas. This is not to say that this was all that we looked at. This is just to say this is where we focus a lot of our time and attention. So on the assets and revenue side, obviously cash, capital assets, inventory, and then the revenue and receivable cycle. For liabilities and expenditures, we looked at payrolls, related expenses, payables and the expenses, pension and OPEB, and self-insurance. For the other areas, we look at net position, including any sort of classification that you have to have, including any sort of restricted net position that needs to be disclosed. We look at subsequent events. So this meeting will be documented today and my subsequent events before issuance. We look at any sort of commitments or contingencies. We do send a legal confirmation, and we spend a ton of time on estimates. So the financial statements that you have are not all just hard numbers. Inherently in financial statements and how generally accepted accounting principles work, there's a lot of management and judgment that goes into the numbers that you have. So we spend a lot of time ensuring that that management estimate and judgment is reasonable and fair in relation to the financial statements as a whole. A lot of things that we spend the time on is if there's an allowance. So we don't have an allowance for doubtful accounts, so we make sure that that's reasonable. We look at the useful life of capital assets. Obviously, that impacts your depreciation expense. Pension and OPEB is pretty much all an estimate based on actuarial reports, one from the state and one just from an actuary that PSDA has hired. Same with claims and judgments. So we spend a lot of time looking through those reports and making sure that all of the information and estimates that the actuaries put into them make sense in relation to the financial statements as a whole. And we did not find anything that did not make sense. If we could switch to that next slide. On the single audit side, I mentioned we have to follow both federal and state guidance. On the federal side, we tested your federal transit cluster. That's that really big federal grant that you have. On the state side, we tested the Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged and the Public Transit Block Program. And again, we verified compliance with both grant agreements and with compliance supplements issued by either the state or the federal agencies. If we can slip to the next slide. In summary, clean opinions all around. So the best opinions you could possibly want is what you got. For journal entries, you did not have any, so we as the auditor did not have to propose any sort of journal entries. We did not have any findings in internal controls. There were no deficiencies reported. And just to echo what Julie said, this was a difficult year for everyone. This was our first year as your auditor. Unfortunately, we could not be there because of the COVID situation. We did everything remotely, but I have to say we had full cooperation with management. I know that it can be difficult when you switch audit firms. We tend to call things different things and ask for different things sometimes, but they were great. Every time we needed something, they were quick to get it to us. Every time that there was a question, they were quick to answer it or to say, hey, that doesn't make sense and here's why. So we really appreciate everything that the team did for us to get this out the door in time. And if we can switch to that last slide, I just wanted to point out that Cherry Bekaert works as your auditor all the time, not just when we're doing the audit, not just when I'm doing this presentation. I'm happy to take questions after this, but if anything comes up throughout the year, I do not charge for phone calls, so please do not hesitate to reach out with any sort of questions or concerns you may have. And with that, I'm happy to answer any and all questions you have over the current year audit.
Okay, gentlemen, do we have any questions for Lauren? Do we have any comments or any further discussion about this topic?
Mr. Chair, I have a comment.
Proceed.
Well, I remember Josh and us working on this last year when the procurement and the bid process to pick this new audit firm, and I actually feel that the presentation was excellent, and I'm glad to see that it's worked out, because that was a pretty intense process that we went through, that Brad put us through to get this, to pick this person, to pick the company. So just want to say congratulations and thank you for all your hard work. I'm glad it was a success story for the PSTA. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would say it is a very success story to hear no offense, Laura, but a lovely, boring audit presentation. There's nothing better than that. It was awesome. With no findings, yeah.
Absolutely.
Chair Cox, if I may just add, I really have to give a shout out to everyone. Because it was a pandemic, we got very creative on how to handle inventory counts so that Lauren could see it, et cetera. So I think it also helped a lot being in a pandemic. If we weren't doing something where we were scanning it previously, we're scanning it now. So it's very easy to find things.
Yes.
So that helped quite a bit. A silver lining to the pandemic cloud.
Yeah.
But the action item today is for all of you to accept our annual financial report for 20 to recommend to the board for full approval.
All righty. Do I have a motion to receive the 2020 audit report?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the audit report for 2020.
I'll support that, Mr. Chair.
All right, Josh, move. Richard seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes, and this will need to be an action item in the upcoming full board committee, or meeting, I should say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I have one more question?
Sure.
Mr. Miller, do we use that same firm next year? How does that work? We continue with them?
We do. Yes, I think I can't remember, is it a 5-year contract, Debbie, or is it?
I believe it is a full 5-year contract.
Great.
I think we've got 3 years plus 2 1-year options.
Yeah.
It's always nice if things are going well to go the full 5 years, because it is always a challenge when you're transitioning auditors
Thank
for
you.
both sides.
Thank you. Perfect.
Okay, we move on. And next will be the Dunedin ABA pilot agreement, and it'll be an interlocal agreement with Dunedin for the ABA autonomous vehicle demonstration, and PSDA's Project Jacob Labuka will give us the skinny on this, so to speak. Hi, Jay.
Good morning. Morning, everybody.
Hi.
Good morning.
Here we go. Great. Great. So, as the chair said, my name is Jacob Labutka. I'm a project planner here at PSTA. I'm also the project manager for our AVA demonstration program. As the AVA service comes to a close in St. Petersburg this week, we are now looking towards the future of the AVA program. So today we have an action item to approve an interlocal agreement with the city of Dunedin to allow AVA to expand on into its next service area. Next slide, please. So, of course, the next stop for AVA, we will be looking to deploy the service in 2 locations in North County. We'd be looking in Dunedin and Clearwater. We are currently out to bid to select a vendor to operate the demonstrations in these 2 locations, and we anticipate the selection of the vendor to come before the PSTA board at the April board meeting next month. We did last month, the TBARTA Finance Committee did approve an MOU that will provide some of their federal funds that will go towards funding the operations of these 2 demonstrations in Dunedin and Clearwater, and we would provide a match from our capital budget to the federal funds provided by TBARTA. Next slide, please. So this is an image of the proposed route that we have been in discussion with the city and the CRA Commission on. So this proposed route AVA route in Dunedin would go between sort of the core downtown area on the north end at Douglas and Main Street, and it would go down Douglas Avenue and go toward serve the Dunedin Blue Jays Stadium area. So just gonna kind of go up and down Douglas and can utilize existing PSA bus stops and turn around at the public library on the south end and on the north end at with the former Optical Outlets parking lot, the lease of which is owned by the city. If for any reason we need to make any modifications to this route going forward, we do have a clause in the agreement that does allow us to make any maybe changes if we, to submit that in writing with the city, say if we need to adjust the turnarounds or anything of that nature. Next slide, please. So this slide summarizes the terms of the interlocal agreement. This is very similar to what was approved for the interlocal agreement with St. Petersburg for the AVA deployment on Bayshore. So this outlines responsibilities from the city as well as responsibilities from PSTA. So the city is responsible for improvements to route infrastructure, such as things like trimming trees, as well as securing some rooftop space for necessary satellite communications equipment. They're responsible for improvements to any stop infrastructure, at any stops that maybe need to be insured for ADA compliance. We are utilizing existing PSTA bus stops and other locations with existing landing pads. So that shouldn't be too much of an issue there. And we're also responsible for providing vehicle storage location similar in St. Petersburg that has access to electricity to power the shuttles as well as water for cleaning. And we as PSTA, of course, are responsible for funding and deploying the service, develop and installing all signage along stops along the route, and in addition, working with the vendor to provide emergency response training to fire, rescue, and police, so they can learn about the shuttle before deployment. Next slide, please. So we're just recommending approval of this interlocal agreement with the city of Dunedin to deploy the AVA demonstration within downtown Dunedin. And with that, I'll pass it back to the chair and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. And members here, do we have any questions or comments or discussion for this project? I have a question. Looking at the route, find it. Yeah, it's starting at downtown. Is there parking there for folks that say, for example, want to go to the Blue Jays game and ride AVA down?
Yes. Yes. So that parking lot. So that's at the former Optical Outlets, and that is currently utilized as public parking. So say somebody did want to go to a Blue Jays game, somebody could theoretically park at the Optical Outlets parking lot, or maybe utilize street parking nearby and take the shuttle to games.
Thank you. Oh, hi, Jeff.
As a representative of the great city of Dunedin, just a comment that we can't be any more excited about this project coming forward and moving forward. And the sooner it gets to Dunedin, the better. It will be welcomed with open arms.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay.
Yes, I would agree with that. Jacob and I don't know if, Jeff, you know any greater update, but the Toronto Blue Jays have extended they're going to actually play their first month or so of games, of real games, in Dunedin. So the sooner we get this going, I don't know if that, right now, according to the Blue Jays website, they don't say where they're going to be in the month of May when we would plan to start this thing, but they might be there. This would be a great parking shuttle for that.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's coming to the Dunedin Commission, Cassandra or Jacob, do you know what day?
It's on April 13th is when it's going to the Dunedin Commission.
Okay, do we have a motion to recommend approval of the interlocal agreement with the city of Dunedin for the ABA program, I should say.
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend approval of the interlocal agreement with the city of Dunedin for the deployment of the ABA.
And I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Good job, Jacob.
Thank you, Jacob.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Now we move on to another exciting subject,
Exciting.
the acceptance of an insurance claim.
This is electrifying and positive.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Welcome,
Diane.
Diane Randall, Director of Risk Management. And yes, actually, this is an exciting morning because we're getting money rather than giving money in this instance. In the early morning hours of July 27th, 2020, the Gateway Power Station that is located near PSTA's facility was struck by lightning. And as a result, we had a power surge that went through the grid that caused extensive damage to our IT and maintenance electrical equipment. On the action item form itself, I have a breakdown of all the equipment that was damaged. But the long and the short of it was that total damages were $326,924.09. $273,451.35 was physical damage, and $52,842.72 were in related service agreements. Our insurance carrier has inspected our premises and completed their evaluation and has offered us the sum of $248,451.35 to resolve this claim. This includes 100% of the physical damages less our $25,000 deductible. So I'm here this morning to request approval and acceptance of the insurance carrier settlement offer to go on the board consent agenda for $248,451.35.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve.
Okay,
And I'll support the motion.
we have any discussion?
I do have a question, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, Diane, can you share what I'm not sure what in related service agreements, the 52,842, can you share what those, give us a sense of what those are?
Sure. Those are things like providing training to the staff, providing technical support, like if we have technical questions or something like that, and then our licenses. Those are all considered kind of ancillary services to the purchase of the equipment, and the insurance only covers the physical damage to the equipment itself.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hearing no further questions, we have a motion from Commissioner Saraki. We have a second from Commissioner Bennett. Let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously, and this will, if acceptable to y'all here, we'll take it to the board's consent agenda. Like the last item we had, Ava, we'll take both those to the consent agenda to the full board, if that's all right with y'all. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
since this is going on consent, I just gotta say this. The saying is, well, we could get struck by lightning and that might be this is the luckiest thing in the history of PSTA. It's never happened before, but actually, I think one of these computer switches was on our capital improvement program to be replaced, so thank you, Diane, we actually saved money with this.
How about that, huh?
I know, lightning strike.
Say, Vince, it was not quite such a boring one after all.
I apologize. Okay, next we have the Henry and Al duo, and we're gonna talk about hybrid bus overhaul batteries. And who's gonna go first, Henry or Al?
I'll go first. Good morning, Henry Lukasik, Director of Maintenance. So the action item before you today is to award a one-year contract with 2-year options to Mohawk Engineering for the purchase of components that go into our customary overhaul of our hybrid electric buses. So PSTA has 210 total buses, of which 88 of those are hybrid electric. They range from model year 2010 all the way to our newest ones, which are 2019. So much like all of our buses, they do go through an overhaul process. Specifically, our hybrid electric buses share similar components to all electric buses in that they have what we call high voltage batteries that assist with the propulsion system. Typically, the overhaul occurs every about 6 years or 300,000 miles. Currently, our 2014 and 2015 buses, of which there are 21 of those, have hit that mile marker. So it's time to go in and plan to do those overhauls. Through years of training and experience, we save quite a bit of money in the cost of those overhauls by completing the work in-house by our trained technicians. Some terminology as you look through the action item in your agenda, you're gonna see two components under the procurement section that go into rebuilding these battery packs. One is known as a ESS2 refresh kit and the other one is a conversion kit. So some terminology definitions. ESS stands for Energy Storage System. You could basically think of those as the batteries on top of the buses. There are a total of 2 batteries, but they are comprised of 6 sub-packs. And the conversion kit is basically a high voltage fastener and securement kit. It's everything it's the nuts and bolts that go into securing everything in there. With that, I'll turn it over to Al Burns to just talk about our procurement of these components.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Al Burns, your highly motivated procurement director.
There we go.
This morning, I'd like to go over the procurement considerations. In February of this year, we released an invitation for bid, or an IFB, and it was issued in compliance with PSTA's procurement policies. The solicitation was posted on PSTA's website and on Demand Store. In March 2nd, we received 3 bids from Florida Detroit Diesel Allison, Mohawk Manufacturing and Supply, and NFI Aftermarket Parts. Down below, you'll see a table, and that is the total cost for the base year, the total cost for option year 1 and option year 2 for the kits. The reason we went out for a 3-year was because the battery market is very volatile, and we want to secure pricing over the course of the next 3 years. As usual with a contract of this size, we did a responsibility check, and Mohawk Manufacturing and Supply was determined to have the capacity to do the work and therefore are eligible for award. We have done business with Mohawk Supply on numerous projects. We even brought some action items before the Finance Committee on previous things. The fiscal impact, this has been budgeted and is part of the approved FY21 budget. And once again, Mr. Chair, the recommendation is recommend approval of a 1-year contract with 2 1-year options with Mohawk Manufacturing and Supply Company for a total contract amount not to exceed $1,380,000 and authorize the CEO to exercise the 2 1-year options. If there are any questions, Henry and I would be more than happy to answer.
You're on. Oh. Okay. Oh, come on. All right. Thank you, both.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So So as I understand it, this is a 3-year contract, one with 2 option years, to replace the batteries on those 21 buses. So we're saying it's gonna take, we're gonna, do 7 a year, or how does that break out on a per year basis?
Great question, Commissioner Schulman. So when you look at your chart, the average cost for an ESS refresh kit is approximately $39,000 throughout the 3 years. The average cost of an ESS conversion kit is approximately $1,476 on average. The way it breaks out is we have 8 that will be purchased under the base year. We have 13 that will be purchased under option year 1. That makes up the total of the 21 that we have programmed. And as you heard Mr. Burns mention, that the battery market is I would imagine it's more volatile than the crude oil market right now, since the pickup in the EV. So we placed in the option year a total of 13 of those kits, should we need them, if buses come up for overhaul at that time. So that's how that chart breaks out.
Okay, so, can you hit the button?
Can you hit the button? Yeah.
So that explains why there's a big jump between the base year and the first option years, because it's an increased number of units.
Correct.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, any further questions or discussion? We have a motion to recommend this contract with Mohawk.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the contract with Mohawk.
I'll support that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, the motion passes. And if it's acceptable to this committee, it'll go on the consent agenda at our next board meeting, April something or another, isn't it? Or it's end of this month, isn't it, 31st?
Yes, next week.
Yikes. Okay, thank you. Okay, our monthly financial report. Julie, you want to walk us through this?
Apologies, sorry about that. Good morning, I'm Julie Lupus, Director of Accounting. In January, we finished $4.9 million unfavorable to budget, which was driven by property tax and the timing of the distributions. Each year, the property tax comes in very close to the appraiser's estimates. We just have no control over the timing of the receipts, which sometimes can cause variations to the budget. January is a good example of that happening. We try to base the budget on the timing in previous years, but even a one-day difference can have a great effect. The difference between the last day of one month and the first day of another month. When you look at the January year-to-date financials, we are $3.4 million favorable to budget, the revenue being driven by property taxes. Taken over the 4 months, the monthly variations in property taxes have smoothed out, and as a sneak peek, in February, we're $500,000 over budget for year-to-date for property taxes. So the more months you're looking at, the closer to budget the property taxes actually are. Staff is continuing to control expenses, with our largest savings coming from reduced service hours. I know that was a very high-level discussion, but do you have any specific questions about the financials? And thank you.
Any questions from the committee? Okay. We can move on here to Mr. Miller, ridership performance for February.
Yes, thank you. And I think you have a paper copy at your places of this, as well as it's now, I see it's in the packet too. So, of course, ridership is something that we're looking at very carefully, because we're in the mode right now of looking to when we can continue to get back to sort of full service again. Right now, we're almost at full service on our operation, except we are ending all services at 10 o'clock, 10 p.m., and so a little bit earlier. And we've actually even gotten some complaints, and there was even a comment at the track meeting about, right now, Pinellas is seeing spring break kind of come back. We're seeing very high ridership on the beach, and some people are asking, because normally those trolleys run till midnight, and so some people are asking for later night trolley service, so we're looking to put that back in. And of course, we're also looking at what the possibility, when we might restore fares, or allowing people to come into the front door of the bus so then fares can be collected. Right now, we're looking at maybe June 1st for that, if things stay pretty steady and keep going on that. And the ridership is showing that. It's showing a growth in ridership. On our sort of tourist-oriented services, the Looper and Jolly Trolley, those are almost like having almost kind of shockingly, a normal spring break. They are really high right now with usage, and they serve a lot of tourists. They serve a lot of workers who work on the beach and in downtown St. Pete as well. If you look at your performance statistics, I think the only thing that is trending sort of in the wrong direction on that is our security incidents are way up, but they're up by 28%. That's almost entirely due to conflicts going on with mask wearing. Since January 20th, when the new president took office, on his first day, he mandated masks on all transportation, from airplanes to boats to buses, and so now we've got all the signage and everything, but those are relatively, luckily, those are trending downward, I see, in the monthly, which is good, and those are relatively minor kind of arguments mostly about it, but you've probably seen the buses that say, wear your mask before you ride. You pretty much can't get on the bus unless you have a mask, so. And there are TSA auditors, we've found out, that are roaming around Pinellas County checking on us. And we got a clean bill of health our last go around, so that we're in compliance, so. That's my report. If you have any questions on any of the other items on the monthly stats, I'd be glad to answer those.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Josh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brad, just a question. You said potentially opening up service hours June 1st. As opposed to a particular date, do we have community health metrics that we're using to make that decision? A certain percentage positivity, a certain number of folks here that are vaccinated. Have we looked at those metrics versus just throwing a dart at it on the calendar?
Well, again, we haven't actually made any kind of recommendations or decisions yet on that. It's probably, we have talked about sort of setting a target on vaccinations of our employees and the general public in general. We have looked at the possibility of trying to set some kind of metrics on the coronavirus spread in the community, but decided against that specifically, just to try to follow what other transit systems are doing, what our cities are doing in Pinellas County. And right now, we're just kind of looking at the vaccination rate. We believe we've gotten more than 200 of our 600 some employees already have been vaccinated and are getting vaccinated. I sent the email out to all of you last night that we have this great deal going on with Community Health Centers of Pinellas, that they're coming here with their van on Mondays and vaccinating people. And so we're just kind of guessing that maybe we can get the majority of our folks vaccinated and feeling, able to come back to having the front door boarding in June, probably still wearing masks, requiring the mask requirement. That's a federal requirement now. But then we could restore fares.
Has there been any discussion from the federal level about when they may be relaxing that or what criteria they may be using?
I have not seen any. Cassandra, have you seen any? I see you on the screen. Have you heard of any discussion about what the federal government is using to relax the mask requirement?
I have not heard about the mask, the mask changes to the mask, but I have heard that they're going to potentially require it through the end of 2021. And so I think we should be prepared that that will continue at least through the end of this year into next fiscal year. But I have not heard any specific date target.
Yeah, because while I appreciate the comments that our drivers will be, are likely to be vaccinated here soon, one of the reasons of going fare-free was to reduce the crowding at the front of the bus while they're paying. So we have our patrons to think about as well, that they may or may not be in different stages of vaccination. So I just want to make sure we're keeping those metrics in mind as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Josh. Brad, I have a question. So a lot of the security incidents, or probably most, are over mask wearing, and the drivers do have masks to offer riders. All right, so.
They do get a little bag of masks to pass out to customers every day. And so the masks are available.
All right, good. Okay, that's all for that. Do we have any other business or comments from the committee? I have a question, I guess, Brad. I don't know if it'll go to you or Debbie, but when we were renegotiating with Baycare last summer for the DART contract, and I'll move forward. And this was, I think, in the July meeting of way back in 2020. And there was a fuel caveat for CareRide, and it commences April 1st. And what it does, it incrementally gives a break on the gasoline. I think for the first 5 to 10 cents over $2, it was like some kind of break. And right now, gas is at about $3 a gallon, so that would that'd be like $1.
Yes, I know that Baycare has reached out. Debbie, did you hear Commissioner Cox's sort of question?
I did, and they have not amended their billing for that as of this point in time.
Okay, probably because, well, April hadn't begun yet anyway. And I don't know if I believe they pay market rate for gasoline with no other breaks.
Yeah.
So essentially, it'd be $1 a passenger if it stays at like $3 a gallon, which it very well might, which isn't a whole lot of money. I think we're doing about 20,000 rides a month, so that'd be like $20,000, which is a lot of money to me. And anyway.
I think, I believe either Debbie, you told me, or Baycare talked to James, and they told me that they had brought up the fuel surcharge that kicks in.
Okay, well, we're on it, so that's, was my only
Yeah, and we'll be able to absorb it. We're currently about $260,000 under budget through January, and that's one of those things we put in there because it is a volatile item, and we wanted to be conscious of being able to keep them going through the end of June.
Okay, good.
So.
And one thing that is coming up on the planning committee's agenda in a little bit here, and one thing we learned with our new paratransit contract as a way to lower the risk on the contractors is for PSDA to buy the fuel in bulk and just have it delivered to them. And then we're going to do this, I think we're going to probably do the same thing with Jolly Trolley in Clearwater, where Al so motivated, he buys the fuel in bulk, gets a cheap price, and then we just deliver it over to Clearwater too.
Al buys it, then he delivers it, and then,
Yeah.
and he's very highly motivated, so.
He'll stop over at First Transit's place and then it'll go over to Clearwater. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just one thing, Mr. Chairman, I had a couple comments this week about, the bus stops and the bus stations not being adequately cleaned. So I did call and talk to Brad, and we kind of think it might be due to the influx of a lot of spring breakers and new people. But Brad has, talked to our cleaning crew, and, they're doing a thorough job this week, so, just, in case you hear anything about that, some trash and things in the bus stops, especially along Gulf Boulevard.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner, for that. Richard, Henry, do you have any updates on that?
Yeah, we received some word, I believe Friday, that we were needing to increase frequency up from what we were doing. So for starting Monday, or this past Monday, and which will go until May 1st, we have increased frequency along Gulf Boulevard to 3 times daily, a morning, a midday, and an evening run 7 days per week. And then, once spring break winds down, we may, pull those resources back, with a little bit more of a standard off-peak frequency.
Thank you, Henry.
Yeah, thank you for telling us.
Okay.
Okay, if we have no further,
Mr. Chair?
okay, go ahead.
Always one more thing.
Of course.
And this is actually for Debbie. Outside of our audit, in the past, we've had our auditors look at different aspects of operations and provide some insight into other areas outside of preparing the actual audit. Did we have that happen this go-around, or is that in process?
We did not have that. It's interesting you say that. I talked to Lauren about it, and I said, well, I've hit all the major pain points for myself over the last 5-6 years. But we were going to have some change in personnel in the finance division. And I told her what I'd like to do for next year is concentrate in those areas to ensure that any new people in positions are following through on compliance and making sure everything is doing well. So we will have that in next year's audit.
Okay.
But we
Thank you.
did not do anything additional this year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, committee, thank you, everyone, staff, and this meeting is adjourned.
Good job, Mr.
Great job.
Oh,
Chairman.
thank you.
See you next week.
Where are you going? You going out of town at all?
No, you're gonna be here next week and then another meeting, right?
Yeah,
We have a planning meeting at 10:30
I'm not going out
though.
of town until late May. I'm gonna go to Gatlinburg.
oh, good. Your friends, did they get their shot?
Yeah.
They got
Yes.
it?